Okay, sorry about that.
No problem.
All right, so we are starting, we're up to page Yud Aleph in the PDF, the beginning of the first chapter. Mahus hadvekus umalasa, the essence and the character of dvekus and the value of dvekus. Okay, so we begin with dvekus hargashas nochach. Dvekus, he's going to spend some time now defining or giving us not an exact definition, but at least a topology of characteristics, so that we can understand and appreciate what dvekus is. Dvekus is a feeling, hargashas nochach. It's a feeling of presence. Dvekus hi shem klali. Dvekus is a general term, a general way of referring l'chol madregos hahargasha belukos. It's a way of referring to all levels of feeling godliness. Feeling godliness. He's going to constantly use the language of hargasha here, of feeling. This is a felt experience. Dvekus is a felt experience. This is perhaps in contrast, depending on how you interpret things, with the Rambam in the Moreh Nevuchim, where dvekus is a consequence of intellectual awareness, of philosophizing and contemplating, meditating in thought on God and understanding God and so on and so forth. Here, dvekus is a felt experience. Vihi matzah she'adam chai es Hashem Yisbarach, and that experience, that felt experience, is a situation in which a person lives God. That's the terminology he uses. Chai es Hashem Yisbarach. He's living God. Umechuvar elav, and he is connected to him. Madregas hadvekus hayesodisi. So the foundational basic level of dvekus is hargasha shel nochach, a feeling of presence. Dahainu shemargish as Hashem Yisbarach imo, that a person feels, again, all feelings here. Dahainu shemargish as Hashem Yisbarach imo, a person feels that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is with him. Umargish chibur penimi chazak ito, and he feels a strong internal connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, or to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, ad kedei ratzon lios echad imo, up to the point where he wants to be, he desires, he wants to be one with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And it's an internal feeling of connection, an internal feeling of presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, of connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, an internal connection, not a physical connection, not an external connection, but something internal. So much so that it results in this like yearning for unity with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Kebechinas chibuk, he says in the parentheses, it's kind of like a hug. It's the feeling of closeness, it's the feeling of connection. If we're going to relate to it using terminology, physical terminology that we could describe and experience, it's the sense, it's the aspect, it's the feeling that we might associate with the feeling of closeness and connection that might come with a hug. He says in the footnote, "Shemargish kol kach karov im Hashem Yisbarach." It's a feeling that you feel so close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ad sheyachol lifnos elav beloshan nochach and ata. It's a feeling that you feel so close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu that you can feel that you can turn to him in a sense of, I am present in front of him and he is present in front of me, and you can say ata, you. Right? It's the Zek Keli Va'anvehu in Az Yashir, where the Jewish people can point, or as the Gemara describes, Achras Hayamim, when all the tzaddikim sit in a circle, V'Trosem B'Roshem, and they point to the center of the circle and they say, "This is God." Right? You can point to it. It's not even, but it's even closer than that in a sense, because it's a me and you relationship. I can not look, but I can turn to internally. Right? Not physically, but I can turn to HaKadosh Baruch Hu internally and actually feel a direct one-on-one, face-to-face presence and say, this is me, and that is you, and we are here with each other. Zuhi advekus, and this is just foundational. This is basic. This is basic dvekus. Zuhi advekus hatachusha shel ha'adam shehu yachad im Hashem yisbarach. The sense that a person has that he is at one with God. Shehu margish b'mitziuso, a person feels in his existence, in his reality. V'chai yachad ito b'chibor v'kesher amok, and he lives at one with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, with a very, very deep attachment and connection bound up with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'yesh b'zeh harbe madregos, and there are many, many levels of this. Even fundamental basic dvekus, there are many, many levels. Kama makom tofes hakesher im Hashem yisbarach, u'kumo hakesher bein b'nei mishpacha sheyesh hakesher chazak ma'od v'yesh pachos. Right? There are many different levels of this kind of connection. We have a deep, deep, deep connection with family, but we don't have the same relationship and the same kind of connection with every member of the family. How much space does this relationship or does this connection occupy in my life? How much space does this relationship leave in my life for other things? How much am I able to turn away from that connection and focus on other things that don't involve being present in that connection? Depending on the nature of the relationship and depending on the closeness of the relationship, it can be more, it can be less. Right? So, but the fundamental character of that connection is the same. It's a deep connection of unity and oneness and yearning for more oneness and more connection. But sometimes it occupies more of me and sometimes it occupies less of me. And he explains in the footnote, V'chol Yehudi yachol lahagia ad lemadrega hazos. Every Jew is able to come to this level, is able to achieve this level of dvekus. This is actually not unachievable. It's a mitzvah. Dvekus is a mitzvah, v'dav kabo. And lo nitna Torah lemalachi ashares. Mitzvahs are attainable. Mitzvahs are doable. If it's a mitzvah, then we are, each of us in their own way and at their own level, are able to actually achieve something like this. Not all the time, maybe, but it's an attainable goal. Sheba rosho yia asuk rak l'chafesh as kirvas Hashem yisbarach. Everyone is able to attain the level where they're constantly occupied with searching out, seeking closeness with God. V'taivas libotia, sama nafshi lelokim, and they can get to a point, every person is able to get to a point. Again, some people can have more space for this, and other people are going to have less space for this, depending on how big and how expansive one's heart is. All right, Rav Kook describes how different people sort of have more broadness or more narrowness in terms of how they relate to things. Some people, he says, some people are very narrow and they only relate to themselves. They focus on themselves, they relate to themselves. They have no room for considerations of other things, right? So a person who has dvekus in that sense is, has this kind of dvekus, but someone who's trapped in that sense of they only relate to themselves, and that's where their whole focus is, and that's where their whole experiences is in their own, like Dalit Amos, in their own bubble of their own life. So they can constantly be seeking out closeness to God within the bubble of their own life and their own experience. But Rav Kook then says that there are people who are more expansive than that. They have a bigger vision than people who are just occupied with their own little corner of the universe. There are people who are able to expand themselves a little bit more and account for and take into consideration and be attentive to the Jewish people as a whole. Right? So someone who's able to do that is able to then seek dvekus, for example, outside of themselves as well, and their mind is recognizing opportunities and entry points for connectivity with God, right? Just connection points. I can tie a string from here to over there from this thing in me to that thing over there, and I can make connection with God. I can connect to God through that other thing that's out there away from myself. In the Jewish people. And then Rav Kook says there are people who are even more expansive than that, and they relate to, take concern with, and focus on, and are aware of, and internalize the experiences of all of humanity. And then there are people even bigger than that, more expansive than that are able to account for the entire world, not just people, not just human beings, but animal life and plant life and so on and so forth. They say like Rav Kook would not like walk on grass if he didn't have to. So that he didn't trample on the grass or things like that. He had to walk on the grass, and you have to walk on the grass. But if there's an opportunity to not walk on the grass or not trample a flower, he wouldn't trample a flower, right? There are people who have much more expansive. That's a much higher level of dvekus, right? There are gradations of dvekus. They're expanding circles in which I could relate to and tie myself up with God, or things that I can tie myself up with God through. There's levels, infinite levels, infinite levels. But everyone has this concept of I'm going to tie myself to God through the things that are going on for me, that are going on in my life, the experiences that I have, so on and so forth. I'm going to seek connection with God all the time, as big as my mind and my heart are. Sometimes they're very small, but as big as they are, I'm seeking connection with God within those places. That's possible. That's possible for everyone, each in their own place. And a person like that, or a person seeking or experiencing this kind of dvekas, the desire of their heart, the craving of their heart is sama nafshi lelokim. They're thirsty for God. Masai evo ve'era pnei elokim. When will I come and see the face of God? Right? When will I have this nochach experience of me and you back and forth? I can actually feel you present with me here right now. Beyond that dvekas, he continues in the footnote, he says, Yesh es madregas habitul. There's a higher level of dvekas called bitul, nullification, self-nullification. Shehem dvekas amuka yoser, that's a deeper level of dvekas. Ve'inyanamhu, the idea behind bitul is as follows. Hakara amuka ubahira biyichud Hashem yisbarach. This is a deep, deep, clear awareness, understanding, recognition, apprehension of the absolute total unity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'shebepnimius, on an internal level, hu hametzius ha'amitus ha'yechida, that God is the only true reality that exists. Ukamo shehisbar b'makom b'siyat hashma, as we'll explain in its own place. There's a whole separate chapter in B'yam Darkecha on the idea on bittul and practices around bittul. B'sefer B'yam Darkecha darchei avodah l'maisa b'maimar ala bittul. That's another level, right? Because dvekus in the first sense is I exist, I am me, and I and you are you, and here we are together, and we're interacting, and we're connected to each other. We're not one. I am me. I still exist. Bittul also has many, many gradations, but bittul is, I'm not here, I don't exist, I'm not really real because there's only you. And I am entirely and completely subsumed and melted in to you.
Can I ask a question? I might have missed something.
Yeah.
When you have these different stages of the Dveka, you start with family and then community, and then you got animals and other people. And
Yeah.
Where is God in that continuum? Is he at the start, look, before the family, or after you expand out to this great
God is the beating heart within everything that I am able to conceptualize, right? So meaning Rav Kook, these are orthogonal concepts, but meaning Rav Kook is talking about the idea that some people I can't look past their own self, right? The only thing I care about, the only thing I'm aware of is just me, right? Your problems and your concerns and your joys and your ups and your downs, those are not even relevant to me. I'm right. I'm worried about, did I go to Minion this morning? I'm worried about like, what did I have for lunch? I'm worried about like, how is my job going? What's my career look like? Is the leak in my roof fixed or not fixed, and so on. My Dalaramos. That's the only thing I can think about. Some people are like that, Rav Kook says, right? Maybe you can grow past that, but like Rav Kook is not saying that's like, you're not a bad person for that being you. and Dveikus can exist in your little universe.
So what you're saying is just so that it's not God's not on the continuum; he's in the continuum.
He's in the continuum, yes.
Okay.
Yes. Right. So Dveikus would be like, okay, well, my roof is leaking. Like I'm here with God and I'm connected to God through that. And I'm connected to God whether I went to Minyan or didn't go to Minyan and so on and so forth. Right. And there are levels of Dveikus even at all of those things, right? You could think, oh, I'm only connected with God if I davened this morning. No, you can be connected with God even if you didn't daven this morning. It just depends on how you process it and how you relate to it. Right. But then people can get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So I'm just using that as kind of a way of illustrating this idea that there's levels and levels of Dveikus ad ein kates, right? That just okay. But wherever you are in terms of the mindset and the way you process life and experience in the world and some other people and so on and so forth, there is Dveikus in there. There could be Dveikus in there. It's an opportunity. There's opportunity for it.
Okay.
And the more that a person is able to achieve and experience bittul, right? Nullification, everything is just God. There's no me, there's no you, there's no God and me separate from each other. It's just all God. I'm a figment of God's imagination because God is the only real reality. Azai hu zocha shahargasha b'Hashem yisbarach titfos etzlo as kol hamachshava v'hargasha. So the more you sink into bittul, the more you can achieve the feeling that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is taking hold of your thought, your feeling, everything is grasped of by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ad afilu es atzmahu enu margish. Up to the point where you don't even feel yourself, so to speak. There's no self to feel. There's just godliness. There's just Ratzon Hashem. That poofs me into being, so to speak. But I'm not real. I'm just a creation of God's mind at this moment, so to speak. And then there's things even higher than that. He madregas hashra. That's something called hashra. She'ar ha'eloki shora al ha'adam, where a person has this sense or experience that the or elokus, the ratzon Hashem, rests on a person. Umisgala besocho v'darko v'hunasa merkava mamish v'chash es or Hashem yisbarach besocho. This is a higher level where a person now, instead of feeling like I don't exist, I actually do appreciate that I exist because I do exist, or at least God makes me think that, gives me the experience of thinking that I'm existing, right? Meaning in a sense that total bittul of the type described before, which is really just total self-negation, which is like, there's nothing here, is just a stepping stone to something much higher, which is an appreciation for the fact that, no, I am here because God created the experience of me feeling like I am here, right? When I stub my toe, it hurts. When I'm hungry, I'm hungry. When I'm tired, I'm tired. When I get a good nap, I feel rested. Those are real experiences, and God is creating all of those experiences, so those are real. And I, therefore, in my existence and in my being that seems real to me, I am just a Merkava for the Shekhinah. I am just a conduit, a tool by which godliness is revealed into the world. So I am a thing, but the thing that I am is not me, is not a independent creature with a will and so on and so forth. I am just God's mouthpiece. I'm God's hand. I'm God's eyes, so to speak. Operating and revealing God through everything that I do because I'm the puppet at the end of the strings. And there's no real difference between the puppeteer and the puppet at the end of the day. It's only an apparent one. This level, at a very, very high level within this level, that's what nevuah is, he says. That's what prophecy is. Prophecy is the ability to actually really experience how I am just a mouthpiece, a conduit for God's revelation into the world. And if I'm experiencing that in a true way, then actually that's what I'm experiencing. That's what I become. I become a receptacle for nevuah because there's no me anymore. Although I'm here, so I'm capable of being a receptacle, right? Someone who's in a state of bittul may be a very, very high person, but they can't be a navi. They can't be a Navi because I can't, so to speak, I can't use you as a tool to express myself into the world when you're not here and you don't even think you're here.
I prefer that word. You were an expression of God.
Yeah.
That's not the word tool, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. A tool has a lot of negative connotations. I understand.
Expression.
Okay. Okay, so this shleimus hamadrega hazos, the wholeness of this level is as follows. Sha'adam, the completion of this level is as follows. Sha'adam kol kach margish as Hashem yisbarach v'kol kach mechuv very love, that a person experiencing devekus feels the devekus so much, feels God so much, feels that connectivity, inner connectivity and presence of God so much, and is so connected ad shakol habriya v'inyana hagashmiyam, up to the point where all of creation and all of material reality and all of material concerns and physical issues and so on and so forth, lo tofsim etzlo chashivos, they don't matter to him anymore. They're not important. Elohu machshiv umargish rak devarim sheyesh bem shaychus em Hashem yisbarach. A person only processes, feels, contemplates things that have a connection, are related to HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Almost like a possession. Yeah.
Okay, now that doesn't mean, what, sorry, what?
Almost like a possession. So yeah, well, I don't know.
Yeah. That doesn't mean that the world melts away. That's not what he's saying. Ukisha Adam, he says in the footnote in Hey, Ukisha Adam zochel shaychus emes em Hashem yisbarach, when a person achieves or is lucky enough to achieve, right? Zocha, this isn't something that you can make happen, right? You have to be lucky to get this stuff. You have to merit it. When a person gets such a thing, l'shaychus emes im Hashem yisbarach, to true connectivity and relatedness to Hakadosh Baruch Hu, az gam ma'od chashuv lo Hashem yisbarach yisgala l'chol ha'olam. Then it becomes very important to him that Hashem is revealed beyond him, right? I've had this experience, and I want everyone else to have this experience. Their only concern becomes revealing, expressing, again, being a vehicle for the revelation and further apprehension of HaKadosh Baruch Hu outside of themselves. So the circle expands. They want to expand that circle of that experience. And back in the main text on top, and a person needs to refine this and elevate within this level after level after level, right? More and more. Shalibo Yavar Lihidavik Hashem Yisbarach, so that their heart burns to connect to God. V'lo yanuach v'lo yishkot ad sheyizke. And then a person doesn't rest, and a person doesn't stop, and a person isn't able to quiet themselves until they've achieved this. That is a brief. He's going to it's a 200 something page. Not 200, not quite 200 pages, 160-page book. He's going to break this down and get into this more, but just as an introductory, he's trying to give us a description of Dvekus, a brief description of Dvekus, so we have something to work with. We need vocabulary. Okay.
It's Yitkale l'chol ha'olam, but it's not Yigale. He's He's sharing himself, I guess, in some sense. You know what I'm saying? It's reflexive. You know what I'm saying? That's the word. He was
Yeah.
So yes, you want to share with the whole world, but you want to share yourself with the whole world. You know what I'm saying?
No, I want chashuv lo Hashem Yisbarach yitkal l'cholam, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should share himself.
Oh, God shares himself.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
Okay, so it's not your personal. It's just
right.
You okay? So, okay, you want everyone to participate in that. What you're experiencing.
The subject there is HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I just to clarify something. So really, we are all always bittul in a way, because we're it is a puppet show. We're all puppets. Whether we're into our own self and our own bubble, or we're not. Really, the question is, what is our awareness? Right? So Dvekas is about our awareness. So I'm already a I'm already a tool of Hashem. I'm being a tool of Hashem, regardless of whether I want to or not. So
Mhm.
now so Dvekas is really the awareness of the fact that Hashem is doing this, meaning Hashem is using me the way he needs me to be used. And if I'm more aware of it, I can share it with the world because I can say, oh, I recognize that this thing that happened to me or this thing that happened to that. And I expand naturally because I want to share that with other people. Like, oh, you think you had a bad day? You did, but maybe this or that is the way Hashem is using you. Like,
Yeah,
meaning we're all tools of Hashem. We're all bittul because
Mhm.
we don't have any, I know free will, not free will, but I'm saying we don't really have free will in that Hashem bakes into creation what we're gonna do. So really Dvekas is a frame of mind and a mindset more than reality, because reality is it's all Hashem. I don't know if I'm being too confusing here. I'm just trying to.
yeah.
Well, so it's right. I mean, you could say that it's right. You're meaning there's always Dvekas. Dvekas is never gone. It's a question, right? You're never up and down in Dvekas, except that Dvekas is a consciousness of where you're of what's happening.
Right, meaning I'm in the worst spot. I'm in a club somewhere. And I'm like, I don't see God anywhere. And that classic thing is that's where Hashem is with you the most. And having the awareness, even in that dark moment where you feel Hashem isn't anywhere near here, that's literally where he is the most. It's that kind of thing. It's that frame of mind, that mindset that you're always very, very close to Hashem. He is using you regardless. And the fact and the power of Dvekas is recognizing it and saying, oh, this horrible thing that happened to me or this good thing that happened to me, even the person that's in their own bubble because they're depressed or whatever, they're able to get out of it by saying, oh, Hashem is here. Because the Vegas is not an option. It's just the Vegas is whether we recognize it or not.
Right.
That's what
Exactly.
I'm, yeah,
Yes. Yes. Exactly. Exactly. It's subjective, right? Meaning
right.
objectively, nothing ever changes.
But what I've hooked on is that somehow it becomes important for us on an individual level that God is revealed to the world in his kingship. I mean, you could say is that the old saying is, like Noah, he didn't care. You know what I'm saying? Is this I find this interesting that somehow being connected means that you're interested in the whole world being connected. It wasn't clear. That wasn't obvious to me. Okay. Any thought on that?
Yeah. Yeah. I
I mean,
mean,
it's a very powerful thought because that means if you don't have that desire for the whole world to be connected and to recognize his mouth, but something's missing in you, apparently. You
right.
see?
Yeah. 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 That does seem to be what he's saying. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Again, now I think it's always important to especially in the way he approaches these things is to add the caveat is we should always be speaking in terms of degree rather than yes or no, right? So like that doesn't mean that you don't have dvekus if you're not seeking or desiring that God be revealing himself and be seen by
You
everyone.
don't have to be an outreach rabbi in order to be a good
Right,
Jew.
but well, we can meaning that there's more and less Dvekus. I'm more Davuk or I'm less Davuk. I'm not. It's not that I am or I'm not, but I'm more and I'm less, or I'm conscious of it more. I'm conscious of it less. Um, so I just think that part is important. I mean, just because, right? Meaning everything here is spectral. I think and that's why he emphasizes there's endless levels of this, endless levels of Dvekus and endless levels within each of the endless levels of Dvekus, because everything is tiny little bits of incremental change and growth. So it's not that you are not mistabik with Kadosh Baruch Hu if your mind is not obsessed with and your heart is not obsessed with. It's very, very important that God be more and more revealed to l'chol ha'olam, right? Okay, fine. So that means that meaning, first of all, it's not that you don't want that at all. Let's, right, be introspective enough to acknowledge, oh, there's a part of me that wants that. How much other things that concern me as well means that there's parts of me that don't want that, or there are times of day I don't want that, or I don't care for that, or other things that crowd it out. But it is there, so I'm on the spectrum. If I'm on that spectrum, I'm also on the Dveikus spectrum. It's like, this is why he uses the example, I think, of family members, of closeness with family members, right? Like, meaning the relationship you are related, right? You are connected. How connected are you? You could be more, you could be less. The relationships go up, the relationships go down, but there is a connection, period. Now, once there's connection, we can talk about how we move the needle here or there, or whether we're moving this direction or that direction. But I think we should be careful not to speak in absolutes. Number one, because you can never really achieve dveikus, right? It's not, I'm never there if we're going to talk about it in an absolute sense. And I'm also never totally off. It's on both ends.
And just one last thing, Shlomo. So, Robert Pill, sorry. So, um, if so, the whole concept that there's no atheist in a foxhole kind of thing, is
Yeah.
that the like real inner, meaning even the biggest atheist, Dawkins, whoever you talk, like, is that because there's a spark in there, even if you're Jewish or not, like that somewhere inside of you, that you're connected to something else, and that in those moments, is that where it comes from? That there's always the Vekas? I know it's kind of a weird question, but it's just like it's always there. Like you can never really be not connected to God, even if you don't believe in God.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know if that's. I don't know if I don't know if I
And then
think that that's
I don't think it goes that far, but it's a beautiful. I think what you're saying though is that we would feel good. It makes us feel good if that atheist turns around and prays to God.
I hear what you're saying. Right. That's true.
I mean, from this perspective, I think like the idea that underlies that is the more you strip away um,
The ego.
ego, space for other considerations, right? Like there's no the again, I think the I don't know if I would stand by the quote, but the guy in the foxhole has everything stripped away from him now,
Right.
right?
Right.
There's nothing left. So there's nothing preventing Dveikus, right? Meaning you're stripping away all of the stuff that typically gets in the way of Dveikus or being conscious of Dveikus, because normally I'm worried about my job and I'm worried about this and I'm worried about that. But like the real guy in the foxhole, like I mean, you read like soldiers' memoirs. The successful soldiers are the guys who go into battle and consider themselves already dead,
Right.
right?
But
I'm
that
already
also
dead.
like ties into what he says about bitachon, right? That when everything else is stripped away and there's no more kochi biyotzem yadi, then you don't have a choice.
Right.
So yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
There's nothing to protect anymore. There's nothing to save. There's nothing to worry about. Everything is there's nothing there. So like, what's left? Or to use Tanya language, because tomorrow night is Tanya, right? The all of the self-preservation concerns of the nefesh bahamis are gone, because they become irrelevant. There's nothing to preserve. So the nefesh bahamis is not activated. So there's nothing left other than the nefesh elokis to be functioning.
Which is also a tzaddik, right? So
Right.
that's how they're completely bit.
Right. Okay. So base hadvekus miromemes as kol malchusa adam. So dvekus, this experience that he's describing, it elevates the entire essence of a person. V'hine adam shezochel dvekus v'hargashas kesher im Hashem Yisbarach. A person that experiences a zocha to dvekus and a feeling of connection with the Kadosh Baruch Hu, madregaso gavoa harbe yoser mimi shechai rak b'kabbalas ol. So such a person is at a higher level than somebody who lives simply with Kabbalas ol Malchus Shemayim, right? I do it because you told me to do it. I do it because I have to do it. I do it because not that I want to do it, but you dump it on me, and I have to follow the rules because other bad things are going to happen to me. Kabbalah soul. Shu Adam Shemakir b'Mitzias Hashem Yisbarach, a person who's makabel ol malchus shemaim recognizes God's reality. Right? This is why, right? Shema is Kabbalah, Shema Yisrael, right? Kriya Shema is Kabbalah's ol malchus shemaim. It's not a small thing. It's not something that should be minimized. It's a very big thing. It's a recognition of the reality of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Yareh Mimenu, and one is in awe of that reality. And because I'm aware of what God is, Yichud Hashem, etc., etc., and because I'm in awe of that reality, because I'm a little bit this and that's that, right? So then I accept him on myself. I better do what you told me to do, right? I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I don't want to do it. I'm not driven to do it internally, but you're weighing down on me. The Ol Malchus Shemaim is pushing down on me the weightiness of and the awfulness in a good way. The awfulness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, of the reality of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is weighing so heavy that I just have to do. I have to obey. That's Kabbalah's Ol. Although it's true that someone who's makabel ol malchus shemayim, they recognize HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and not just big bad God, but they recognize the reality of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Yichud Hashem, Yichud Ilah, Yichud Tata, unity of Yichud Ilah and Yichud Tata, etc., etc. They recognize it. But that doesn't mean you feel that God is part of your life. You don't sense that that's true. You sense that God is something external to myself, apart from myself. God is over there in the palace in heaven, sending down orders and throwing lightning bolts if I don't obey, and he's in charge of everything and has Bala Kochos Kulam, and he can do whatever he wants. And so I must obey, because not even right. I can operate in Kabbalah's Ol even from a perspective of not just like I don't want to get hit by a lightning bolt, but of genuine yiras haromimos, of awe of this awful, again, awful in a good way, awful thing that I'm aware of, this all-encompassing God. That's still Kabbalah's Ol. Because the thing that's getting me to do what I'm doing is external to myself, imposing its will on me, and I can't but obey because there's nothing else to do. But it's still an external imposition.
There was a awesome as opposed to awful. Okay.
Sorry,
okay.
what?
Awesome.
Awesome.
It's easier. Okay.
Yeah, but also I find awesome like cheapens it. I don't know.
I like awful better. Okay.
Awful sounds just weightier. It's just like, dreadful. Dreadful, not in a bad way. I think once upon a time we used to use not we, but like English used the word awful and dreadful in like a elevated way, not in a bad way. Okay. V'hu be'enav kemo melech al ha'am. God, from this perspective of Kabbalah's Ol, is the king, and we are the nation. Shehu mechutz lebeisa adam b'chai. This is outside of my house and my life and my concerns, and we're not intimate friends, right? God's the king. I'm the subject. Listen to the king. Avol b'medregas ha'devekus, but within the many levels of devekus, Ha'adam margish as Hashem Yisbarach b'sochai. A person feels HaKadosh Baruch Hu within their life, b'tefisas v'histaklos hasechel u'behargashas v'ratzon halev. Intellectually, I grasp the presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in my mind. I can wrap my head around it, conceptually, intellectually, mentally, as well as I feel it in a very, very deep sense, ubahargashos v'ratzon halev, in the feelings and the desire, the deep ratzon is keser. Ratzon is the point at which there's no rationale for why I feel this way, or why I want this, or why I want that. I want it because I want it because I want it. Turtles all the way down. There's no explanation for why. There's no room for a why. I can't give you a why, right? Why do you like vanilla ice cream? It tastes good. Why do you find it? It's just that's what I like. That's what I like. It's a ratzon halev, deep, 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 deep ratzon, deep feeling, without rationales, without reasons, without negios and gains and advantages and so on and so forth. That's what Dveikus is. I feel God. I feel God in my life. I feel God's presence in my reality, in my experience, in my reality. Intellectually, I'm cognizant of it. I can conceptualize it. I can connect to it and the ideas that what that means conceptually. And I feel it deep, deep down, and I can't explain it. Because if I can explain it, then already there's like it's contingent on something, right? This is like the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos says, this ava she'ena toluya b'davar, right? Like I can't explain it. As soon as I can explain it, then it's totally in something, and when I take the thing away, so the house of cards falls down. Dveikus is not rational. It's not It's not something that can be explainable. It just is. V'hu tofes etzlo makom b'chayav, and Hakadosh Baruch Hu occupies space in my life. There's a space within which Hakadosh Baruch Hu, that's God's space. Ubahargashos, ubamachshavos, in my feelings and in my thoughts, God fills those things. Maybe not all of those things. That's a very, 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 very high level of debate, like you said in the previous section, right? That the whole idea is that the more space in my life is occupied by these kinds of feelings, these kinds of awarenesses, these kinds of processing of my reality, the higher the level of dveikus, right? This is like, you could compare it to, your kids, right? You can, you can be present with your kids when you're with them physically, but how much space do they occupy in every thought that goes through your head, and every feeling that runs through your heart, and every action that is done by your body when you're not with them, right? Probably some space, some of the thoughts, some of the actions, some of the feelings, but not all of them. Even when you're actually with them, 3 inches away from them, not all of them. That's what we're talking about, I think, when we're talking about Dveikus. How much of my everything processing through me is occupied, is filled with God, 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 God. God is here. God is in this thought. God is in this experience. God is in that feeling. God is in this action. This action is connected to God. That thought is connected to God. This feeling is connected to God. If only on the level of mamale kol almin, and God is creating these experiences as I'm having them. That's dveikus, right? That's a kind of dveikus. There can be more sophisticated dveikus. How is it that God is creating this thought and this action and this feeling, and what's the process of that? And I can, right, the same way, if I drink a glass of wine, I can guzzle the glass of wine because I'm an unsophisticated boor, and I can just drink the wine. Or if I am a sommelier and I can appreciate every little aspect of the wine that's happening, right? So if I'm an unsophisticated davuk b'Hashem, I have a thought, and maybe my experience of that thought is created by God. Okay, that's dveikus through that thought, right? God is present within that thought because the thought's a creation. The thought's a phenomenon in created reality. So that thought is connected to God. Through that thought, I've connected to God. Or I can have a deeper appreciation of what's happening in that thought. What kind of thought is that? On a Kabbalistic level, right? We could talk about it in terms of spheros and partsufim and olamos. What kind of what part of my neshama is operating? What does that connect to in different ways in which God operates and pulls levers within the world? And that's like the sommelier who can taste the cherries and taste the strawberries and the oak, and which region of Italy the wine came from and what year it was, because it was this volcano erupted and whatever it happened. That's a much deeper way of connecting through that experience to the things on the other side of that experience. But on a less sophisticated level, it's just I had a thought. Thoughts are created by God. Okay, that I've dveikus through that thought. All right, but there can be more, it can be more full, it can be more deep, it can be more complex and nuanced, Dvekus, in more parts of my life, in more of my thoughts, and more of my feelings, and more of my actions. Or it could be less sophisticated, and less thoughts, and less actions, and less feelings, and less awareness.
The example that you brought with the children is a really good one, because if our children are do something amazing, we're like, oh, we have so much nachas, and we think about them. Or if they do something terrible, or they're in trouble, then you're thinking about them all the time. And also with Hashem, it's like if we win the lottery, we'll be like, oh my gosh, Hashem is so good to me. Or if something terrible is like we chas v'shalom, someone's sick, or then we think about him a lot because we're sick, and that's all we can think about. This is on a lower level, but I guess it's that middle ground where even in the mundane, when things are not bad or not good, that you still, I guess, see. And then you get to the level of noticing the flavors of the mundane, and what we think is mundane is not really mundane.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah. Although, yeah, I'm not so sure how present I am, even when my kids are doing good and bad things. But
Usually it's the bad, not the good, but
yeah, the bad, I'm more there for. That's true. That's good. Okay, good. So the next section is a little bit longer, and I think probably it's also conceptually it's a good place to stop. So he's pivoting now a little bit from describing the experience of Dvekus, and in the next section, he's going to start describing a little bit why Dvekus is so central and so important, how it's so central and so important. He's going to try and prove to us and demonstrate to us why everything is really about Dvekus and is built on Dvekus and built for and aims at achieving Dvekus. So I think that's probably a good place to stop for now. And we'll get into that slightly new angle on this, God willing, next week. Have a good night.